Businesses that are going to win big in the next few years are going to be those that step in with something new and unique to offer, focusing on the brand and how they communicate that to the customers. Those are going to be the ones that win big.
That is my friend Daryl Klingaman, an extraordinary leader whose career in marketing and sales is nothing short of inspiring. From humbling beginnings on a farm in Wisconsin to scaling a top Google Premier partner agency, Disruptive Advertising, Daryl's journey is packed with lessons for business owners and entrepreneurs alike.
Growing from under 10 employees to over 150 employees in about 8 years.
In this episode, we get a rare look into the experiences that shaped Daryl's work ethic, as well as his approach to business and marketing.
I grew up on a farm in Wisconsin, just learned a lot of things about hard work and work ethic at a young age.
So what strategies does Daryl recommend for staying competitive in today's market?
Businesses are coming back to authenticity. And what I mean by that is, who are we at our core and what does that look like? And how do we communicate that to our customers in a way that they're going to connect and resonate with?
And what does he believe that is key to long-term success?
It's better to fail, but fail daring greatly, than to have not tried at all. And even if you fall flat on your face, how much better is that than never having even taken a chance?
In this episode, Daryl also gives insights into brand building and how it can help elevate your business online.
Brand is like your unique identity and the reputation behind that identity. You've got to be unique. You got to do things differently. You got to do things that your mama would be proud of, right? And that's what brand is at the end of the day.
Everything about this episode is amazing, but what really has me excited is where Daryl sees the future going.
I think that marketing is going to become more and more about.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Digital Revolution Podcast. I'm your host, Eli Adams. Today's episode is brought to you by FireUsMarketing.com, where SEO solutions pave the way to digital excellence. In today's episode, we're joined by Daryl Klingaman. Daryl is a dynamic leader whose professional journey in marketing and sales is as impressive as it is inspiring. Professionally, he's had an exhilarating career. Most notably, his marketing agency, where he was a partner, was a top Google Premier partner with an astonishing 150 plus employees and nearly $30 million in annual revenue. Today, Daryl channels his entrepreneurial spirit into running Ember, EMBR.com, an innovative e-commerce retailer known for its unique men's accessories. He's also the visionary behind a global staffing agency that specializes in connecting US-based companies with international marketing talent. Beyond the boardroom, Daryl is a devoted husband and father of 4 with a passion for endurance sports, tackling marathons and ultramarathons with the same zeal he applies to his professional endeavors. Join me as we dive into Daryl's story and learn from his experience in this digital world. Welcome to the show, Daryl.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, Eli.
Yeah, man, I'm excited too. I know that you and I have known each other for going on like 4 years now, something like that.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And I've really looked up to you, from the time when you were at Disruptive. I know, the first time we met was when I was interviewing for a position there. And I was so excited. I remember this like it was yesterday. I was so excited to work with you and work there. And I went home and something's just like a gut feeling. And I don't know what, it was like the hardest email to write back to you and just be like, I don't know what it is, but like I'm going to have to pass on this. And I don't know if you were going to offer me the job or not, but before it got too far, I just felt something. And honestly, the next couple of years at Young Living were probably some of the biggest progress in my professional career. So I think that was why, and I felt great. But I always felt bad that I didn't get the chance to work with you. But I've loved that we've had this relationship and we've been able to go to lunch and talk and stuff. So I'm really excited to dig in and learn a little bit more, maybe like on a personal level, where you're from, stuff like that. So let's just jump in. Let's learn who Daryl is.
Before we go too far, know that was like the hire that got away on my end. I was pretty good at convincing people to come work with us over there. And at least I felt like I did a pretty good job of that. And you're absolutely going to get the offer. And you were like that hire that got away, man, that just drove me nuts, man, because I knew you would have been just awesome on the team.
That makes me feel so good. Like I'm kind of tearing up. Like I appreciate that validation. And I don't know why I felt the way that I did, but, I built some good relationships the next couple of years at Young Living, got a few more promotions, and kind of turned me into who I am. And who knows, maybe one day we'll get to work together again, and
totally
it'll work out.
Yep. Right? Yeah, these things always seem to lead back to each other.
Yeah. So tell me about yourself.
Yeah. I mean, quick background on me. I grew up on a farm in Wisconsin, and I always feel like that's helpful for people to understand. I feel like those that have been there and done that kind of get it and why that's part of your story, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Um, those that haven't might not understand why you share that as part of your story, but just learned a lot of things about hard work and work ethic at a young age.
Yeah.
Um, I also think a big thing that was impressed upon me as a child is I wanted some money when I was older. And I think that a lot of kids think that and feel that, but um, that there's just a lot of things that are showing up for me now as a father of four that I realized like, wow, that really impacted me as a kid that I never had a yearbook, right? There were no
Mm.
yearbooks in my house. And
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be an adult with money that could buy a yearbook for my kids if I wanted to.
Yeah.
I
Mm-hmm.
buy a yearbook for myself, man, because I never had one, right? And so that was something that was definitely impressed upon me as a kid is we didn't have money.
Yeah.
We split 2-ply toilet paper down the middle to make it go twice as far.
Mm.
Which I don't think it actually works that way, but my mom certainly thought it worked that way. And yeah, I wanted to grow up and have money, right? And so I think I learned a lot of things about work ethic as a kid. And I think that for better or for worse, I grew up wanting to have money.
Mm-hmm.
And so um, business was kind of always on my radar.
Mm-hmm.
I also kind of had law on my radar as well. Thought maybe I'd be an attorney. And I think a lot of it had to do with those were positions where I saw people have money and
Yeah.
people earn a lot of respect for themselves. And I think that those were things that were important to me as a kid and things that I started to optimize for in my life. So, moved from Wisconsin out to Utah for school
Okay.
and went into business. Decided to pursue a degree in business management. Still thinking maybe I'd roll that, parlay that into a legal career, maybe law school and a legal career after that. But while I was getting my business degree with an emphasis on entrepreneurship, I actually landed. I worked full time while I was going to school, and I think that goes back to that farm boy work ethic.
Yeah.
I worked full time, carried a full credit load. 80, 100-hour weeks were just the norm. Didn't have a lot of hobbies. Somehow managed to date just enough to find my wife and get married during that time. But
Nice.
I was really focused on just getting there, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
I think I realize now that there's never really a there. You never really get there. But at the time, it was just I'll do whatever it takes, to get there. I'm working full time to put myself through school. Had a lot of jobs, did a lot of sales, a lot of call center type roles, and landed a job at a marketing agency who was under 10 employees at the time,
Hmm.
and came on to help with sales. And at the time, they needed help managing Google ad accounts as well.
Hmm.
So I started in a hybrid role where I was supposed to sell some stuff and I was supposed to manage some Google ad accounts as well.
Yeah.
And that was a massive move for me in my career, joining such a small agency who really had nothing figured out on the sales side and coming in, eventually taking on all of the internal sales and marketing for that agency,
Hmm.
growing from under 10 employees to over 150 employees, doing
Wow.
so in about 8 years. Was a massive, massive move for me in my career. So that was with a digital marketing agency that focused primarily on paid advertising, and then had the slew of services that often accompany that as well.
Yeah.
And that was a huge part of my career to date. Awesome part of my career that I look back on with a lot of fondness. And then since stepping away from that about a year and a half ago, I actually bought one of our e-commerce clients to that
Hmm.
agency. But they were looking for an exit. And so I
Yeah.
actually bought one of our clients and spend a lot of my time these days working on that e-commerce company.
Yeah.
And then I've been doing some consulting over the last year and a half with other marketing agencies, which has led me to start my latest thing, which is a global staffing firm
Oh,
that
nice.
helps marketing agencies hire talented marketers across the globe, primarily optimizing the relationship between employees in lower cost economies with marketing agencies in the United States who tend to struggle to drive great margins in their business. The marketing agency world can tend to be a pretty slim margin business. A
Yeah.
lot of that margin can be built up by hiring employees in depressed economies throughout the world who are eager and excited to have a job working with a US based company, who are phenomenal marketers and talented in their roles, extremely experienced, great with their English, even if it is a second language for them,
Mm-hmm.
and creates a really big win-win for both the agency here onshore in the US and these employees throughout the world who are eager to find a high paying role with a US
For
based
sure.
company. So
Yeah.
I've been working on that for the last few months, and that is a rewarding business to be a part of.
I bet. That's cool. I don't know if you knew this, but you and I have the farm boy mentality is the same. So I grew up on a mushroom farm in
Okay.
Fillmore, Utah, right? So a lot of
Okay.
the mushrooms that you eat on your pizzas and restaurants come from what's now my brother's farm, which was my dad's farm. So he actually worked his way up in the farm. A little bit of history there. He got just like a regular, I don't even know, maybe a part-time job, worked into full-time, worked up, worked his way up
Yeah.
into that farm, and then eventually ended up buying it and worked it for a handful of
Okay.
years, sold it to my brother. So it's still in the family, but that's what I was raised on, right? And being from a smaller town, I always helped, we helped round up cattle, we helped, do the branding, and we helped all of the other stuff on a
Yeah.
normal farm as well. And I think sometimes, like, how do I get my kids that experience that we had and teach them the same
Yeah.
lessons we have? Because we live in a little bit bigger city. We don't have that kind of farm stuff. And I'm worried that some of that work ethic might be lost, because of the things that we just did naturally as a kid.
Totally. Yeah. I
Yeah.
have the same thought all the time. And just this past weekend, I was out in Vermont, and I was at Joe DeSena's farm. Joe DeSena is the CEO and founder of Spartan Races,
Mm-hmm.
which has grown to be a massive multinational company at this point, and was having some fun out at the Spartan farm, right?
Yeah.
And Joe was there, and his kids were there, and I got to see how Joe raises his kids. And it's a farm, but it's a farm without any sort of commercial element to it. They don't have any livestock, any animals. They don't grow crop there. So his kids aren't getting that work ethic from farming. But what I was astonished by, he has kids that are 10 to 15 years old. Um, from a young age, his kids have been doing two-a-days with
Mm.
workouts. He does
Wow.
two-a-days with his kids, right? I remember doing that in high school football,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
He has his kids doing it, and they've been doing it for years. So he gets them up early in the morning. His kids were awake at 5:30 in the morning,
Yeah.
which what 10, 12-year-old is awake at 5:30 in the morning,
None of them.
and they're working out. And the other thing is we're actually memorizing Man in the Arena. For anyone who's not familiar with that famous
Mm-hmm.
quote by Teddy Roosevelt that I absolutely love. I've got a
Mm-hmm.
poster of it hanging in my office. We were memorizing that, and he was having his 11-year-old coach us and tell us where we were wrong because she had it memorized line for line.
Wow.
And coaching us on how to memorize stuff better, teaching us tricks to memorize. And she's 11.
Yeah.
You got a group of
Yeah.
grown men standing there getting coached by this 11-year-old on how to memorize things. So it did impress me quite a bit that even though they're not growing up on that farm,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak, they are learning how to work hard, and both on the physical side, but also from mental and intelligence side as well. Like they are learning to memorize things. And his
Yeah.
11-year-old has not just memorized things, she's learned how to memorize things. And so I was very impressed by that, and left this weekend with some things that maybe my kids aren't ready for, but it's coming. It's coming.
Are we being too soft on our kids? That's the real question.
I think so. I think so. And this one's
Mhm.
hard for me because I grew up not loving the way I grew up and wanting to get out of it. And it's like
Mhm.
I've gotten out of it, and I'm raising my kids totally different than how I was raised, but I can also look back and connect dots really easily on how that type of upbringing led me to become who I am, and
Yeah.
led me to levels of financial success that I didn't anticipate at this point in my life. Just success within my family, the
Yeah.
relationship I have with my wife and kids, much better than that I grew up with. My physical health, that's big for me, and what I've achieved
Mhm.
there could have never dreamed of. And I think all of that can be credited back to my upbringing, which was hard, right?
Yeah.
But here I am shielding my kids from the same thing. And so 100%, I think we're being too soft on our kids. I think that I think we've had a few generations of that, quite honestly, and
Yeah.
and we need some of that old school tough love for our kids. That's how they become strong, independent, resilient,
Yeah.
confident in themselves. I think that's something about Joe's kids that I was completely impressed by, is the confidence they had to stand in front of a group of grown men
Yeah.
and coach them on things and have conversations with them, and act almost as equals in that group. And so I think I'll butcher this, but Joe says something like the first few years of your kids' lives, like you baby them, you treat them like little princes and princesses.
Yeah.
Then the next few years, you work them like dogs. And that's like age 5 to age 16 or something like that. Work them like dogs.
Yeah.
And then trust them to be adults. And he says something like at age 16 or something, like you've worked them like dogs and now they're grown and now you trust them to do their own thing. Right. And so I kind of like that. I kind of like that. So yeah, yesterday was my first day back from this trip and my kids were doing burpees in the morning. That was, they earned their breakfast by doing some burpees.
How's your memory on memorizing that? Do you still have it memorized right now?
I
Did you make
don't,
it all
I
the way
don't still have
through?
it memorized. No, they gave us 30 minutes was all to memorize this
Okay.
thing, or we were getting punished, right? We are jumping in some cold water and doing some things. So we were able to recite it as a group, but I wouldn't say any one person had it perfectly memorized. But as a
Yeah.
group, we were able to recite it. But I will continue to practice that. Like I said, I've got it hanging in my office. I've got his book, Teddy Roosevelt's book, Man in the Arena, on my nightstand right now, actually. And I think Teddy Roosevelt's incredible. I think that quote and the story behind it is incredible as well. So that's something I would love to have memorized.
So even though you don't have it memorized, just for the listeners, I know when I heard about it, I'm like, how have I never heard this before? And then I read it, I'm like, this is amazing. So just for the listeners, can you give us just like a brief synopsis? Like, what is it and why should they go look for this?
Yeah. So it starts out with, it is not the critic who counts. And the theme is, it's not the critic who counts or the man who thinks he can do better or the doer of deeds who thinks he can do the deeds better, but it's the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred with dust and sweat and blood, who's actually doing the thing. That's what matters. And it's better to fail, but fail daring greatly, than to have not tried at all. And even if you fall flat on your face, how much better is that than never having even taken a chance? And this applies, I think, to all aspects of life. I think we're often intimidated by our potential. Honestly, I think we are intimidated and scared of how truly capable we are. And the man in the arena is just challenging us all to step up and just get in the arena and just do the thing. Whether that is a career aspiration, that's a promotion, if that is a business that you want to start, if that's a physical endeavor, if that's a marathon or a half marathon or an ultra marathon, just be the man in the arena. Be the person who dares greatly and steps inside the arena. And even if you fail, how much more rewarding is that than having never tried? So I love it. I absolutely love that quote in that story.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many quotes similar to that, like shoot for the stars. If you only hit the moon, you're gonna, you're better off than if you wouldn't have shot for the stars. If you'd have shot for the moon, you'd be shorter. So I love, even when it comes to, like, I've seen lots of stats around setting goals, and setting unrealistic goals for yourself is way better than setting these easy, simple ones. And I think a lot of people have different opinions on that, but if you set goals that are unrealistic and you don't hit them, you're better off than if you would have, like, you made it further along the path than if you would have set like these softer goals that you know for sure you would complete. So same ideology behind it, right?
1000%. Yeah.
Okay, so farm boy into college, into agency life. Now you get into agency life and you just succeed like nobody's business. Was there something growing up besides your work ethic that maybe helped you be, creative, that helped you be a better salesperson? Was there something that helped you excel once you got into the agency life?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a few things. One is like just the way I'm wired, very strong operationally, right? I'm an operator through and through. Less of a creative, more of an operator. And so I've approached every role I've had that way, from doing call center phone sales.
Yeah.
It was an operational thing, right? How can I optimize this? How can I optimize this? How can I optimize this? And by the time I've optimized start to finish, the top producing rep on the floor, right? So I'm just wired to be an operator through and through. And that's one of the things that we really excel at in this agency is on the sales and marketing side, absolutely polished up as can be with our own internal sales and marketing programs. At times bringing on 70 new clients in a month. So I think that's a big part of it. The other thing is, like, I actually had a nickname in the agency, which was Chip. And the reason for that nickname is I tend to live life with a little bit of a chip on my shoulder.
Uh-huh.
I think that can, I'm sure a therapist out there could break it down even more for us, but I think it goes back to growing up a way that I didn't want to live the rest of my life, right? Growing up
Yeah.
poor, growing up in an environment that I didn't necessarily love and wanting to get out of that. And so I've absolutely approached most things in my life as though I've got something to prove.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think when you're in that mindset, you're willing to do things that others won't. I
Mm-hmm.
think from an hour standpoint, I think the hours that I put into that position were just atypical. Um, I remember when I think it was my first phone sales job. Um, I called my mom during training and asked her if I could pitch her. Asked her to
Mm-hmm.
just pretend to be a customer. I was selling home services, and so she was a very likely customer that I might be talking to. And
Yeah.
I spent hours with my mom pitching her during training, right? And I think that that's a level of effort that you got to have a little bit of a chip on your shoulder, a little bit of something to prove to
Yeah.
go to that point, right? And that's how I approach just about everything. And so I think I have a lot of the credit should go to that.
Mm-hmm.
I also think I got just a wicked cool opportunity. I think anyone that's young in their career and is able to take the risks should start their own company, should join a small startup. The risks are great, but the wins can be massive, right? Rather than joining a behemoth, rather than stepping into a junior analyst role where maybe if you're good, you can follow their predetermined promotion path that might have you at a senior level position in 14 years,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I think step into the arena, take the chances, take the risks, do it when you're young, work your guts out when you're young
Mm-hmm.
and you have the stamina, you have the time freedom, etc.
Yeah.
to do that, take that chance and do that. And so I was able to step into a situation that was very much so that I was a very young startup. Like I said, less than 10 employees, didn't really have anything figured out on the sales front. And I saw it as a massive opportunity. So I just got in and I worked my guts out and we created something really cool. I didn't necessarily have my career planned out that way
Mm-hmm.
or even in what I'm doing right now, but I did say business was always very intriguing to me. So sales was an easy way to start to get into
Yeah.
business world. And I actually joined this agency while I was still wrapping up my 4-year degree. Um, and initially thought maybe it would just be a cool role while I finished up my degree. I said I came on as an employee initially and had a buddy at the agency. We had co-managed a call center floor together, and
Mm-hmm.
he basically said, "Dude, there's no cubicles around here. We work from the couch, man. We work from bean bags, right? And like, I can work from home
Mm-hmm.
sometimes." And that sounded amazing from someone that comes from the call center world, where you're in your tiny
Yeah.
little cubicle all day, every day. And that's actually why I joined the company. I mean, for very little other reason than that.
Yeah.
Um, had a buddy personally vouching for it, and I heard we got to work from the couch, so I joined. And very quickly saw the opportunity that was in my lap and seized the day. And I remember I was still wrapping up my degree. I did well in school, but my focus shifted very quickly from school to making money. And
Mm-hmm.
hey, I'm in my career now. Who cares if I have the degree or not? And actually had the dean stop me in the hallway at school. I'd won an award apparently, and I didn't show up to the awards banquet. And he gave me a little talking to, Mr. Klingaman, you weren't there. And I apologized. I said, dude, I was out of town on a business trip, man. Like,
Yeah.
I'm making real money now. I'm part of this agency that's growing. Like, this is what's exciting to me. And I plan on finishing the degree. And thanks for the award. Can I still like stop by and grab that? That'd be cool to have. But like,
Yeah.
probably not showing up to awards banquets. And like, my focus shifted. So that's the story how I got involved in the
Yeah.
digital marketing world. Um, and have loved it. And while I'm not in a digital marketing agency setting today, everything I'm doing today is very much so guided by that step and that leap that I took and that awesome run that I just had for the last 8, 9 years with that
Yeah.
marketing agency where I eventually became a partner and executive,
Mhm.
and spent years growing that agency.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what you're currently working on.
Yeah. So I mentioned just a little bit ago, I bought an e-commerce company, one of our clients
Yeah.
at this marketing agency who was looking for an exit. That company is called Ember, EMBR. It's 4-letter domain, embr.com. If you
Nice.
take a look, it's a men's wedding ring company. And that's what I bought it as. And we are in the process of re-identifying ourselves as the place that dudes go to get decked out for their weddings. Having a single product line like wedding rings, where there's a very low repeat purchase rate.
Yeah.
All your digital marketers listening, get this. Selling wedding rings is a crappy business to be in.
Yeah.
And I knew that buying the business. And so I've had big plans to branch outside of that. And so the leap we're taking right now is we're working on building out the place that dudes go to get decked out for their weddings. Grooms deserve to have wedding planning tailored for them. All of wedding planning to date is tailored to the bride and how the bride wants to experience that.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot of in-person shopping, a lot of returning to the gown store or the suit or tux store to get refitted. And look, most dudes don't want to do that. And so what we're doing is wedding planning that you can do from the golf cart. You can do it from the couch while you're watching NCAA football on Saturday. You can do it from anywhere. And so that's what we're working on building right now. We've branched outside of rings. We're selling ties, bow ties, pocket squares now. And eventually you'll see the entire lineup of anything a groom might need for himself or his groomsmen on our website, where it can be a one-stop shop, get everything that you need.
And it's a beautiful brand. If you're listening, go look this up, ember.com, EMBR.com. It's such a beautiful brand. Like the pictures you take in, the way that you portray everything on the website. I applaud you, man. Like, I don't know if it was like that before or not, but it's such a nice looking website and brand. So nice job on that.
I appreciate that. I am lucky to have inherited a lot of that. I mean, the name, the 4-letter domain, the logo, some of those things are really clean and crisp, and I inherited all of that. But we are trying to maintain that as we continue to grow. So yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah. So you have Ember, and then you're also working on this new venture that is helping agencies staff, right?
Yeah, exactly. So since leaving my marketing agency that I was a part of for about 9 years, I've been doing a little bit of consulting with other marketing agencies. And through that consulting work, have identified that a lot of agencies struggle with the same thing that we struggled with at my agency.
Yeah.
And that is, I guess, two pieces. One is hiring talented marketers.
Mm-hmm.
There are often, and I'll tell you, especially during those pandemic years and the Great Resignation, where we're struggling to hire talented marketers. We couldn't hire quick enough to continue our growth. Remember, there was a decision made by us as an executive team to shut off sales and marketing. And I had my sales team recruiting marketers rather than selling. My sales team was on LinkedIn, reaching out to and finding marketers to join our team so we could get back to selling. Agencies struggle to hire talented marketers. The other thing is, and that's why it's been a beautiful thing to get into digital marketing over the last 5-10 years, is there's been a little bit of a shortage. And I think with all of the emphasis on this, this career path and all the education around it, I don't know that it'll always be that way, but I think getting into digital marketing in the last 5 to 10 years has been an awesome move for most people.
Yeah.
The other thing, that the second part that almost every agency struggles with, is maintaining profit margins. It's a tricky business model because every client you bring on board is a little bit different. The solution has to be a little bit different. And so you can't build a factory that just produces widgets at 1,000 units per hour.
Yeah.
You got to build a factory of sorts that can produce a different widget for every single client. And a lot of times, like, that widget even needs to change month over month or quarter over quarter, at a minimum year over year, right? That marketing strategy is changing. So it's a complex business. It's a service-based industry, which never has the types of margins that you can see in technology, right? And effectively, it's you're marking up the cost of labor, right? At the end of the day, that's what the industry is a markup on the cost of labor. And so there's only so much of a markup that the industry will bear. So it tends to be pretty slim margins. And so with some of these clients that I've been consulting, they have wanted to start to look for employees offshore outside of the United States as a means of tapping into a wider pool of talent and also being able to tap into lower cost economies than the United States that still have really talented individuals. And so I share often the example that With my agency, just during the pandemic years, our average, the cost for our average employee increased by almost 50% just in those few short
Wow.
pandemic years. In that same time frame, our clients didn't magically grow an appetite to pay 50% more.
Yep.
And so we had that battle, right, of trying to remain competitive on pricing. And we were never a low cost agency. But even to attract businesses at our level, we had to remain price competitive. And doing that while employees are costing more and more and more because the great
Yep.
resignation was a real thing in our industry. We saw people leaving for higher paying jobs and had to respond to that. We did start to do a little bit of offshoring. We did not move nearly as quickly or as far into that as I wish we would have. And now that's what I'm helping other agencies do is figure out that offshoring piece and figure out how to hire talented marketers in Southeast Asia, in Latin America, in Pakistan and Serbia. I've talked to extremely talented people in South Africa and Nigeria. It's incredible. There is
Yeah.
talent all across this globe. We are so much tighter as a global community now than we've ever been. Technology has
Mm-hmm.
made that possible. And then I think the pandemic forcing everyone to get real comfortable with remote interactions has really accelerated that. It's every week I'm talking to marketers in half a dozen different countries. And not only is that fun and exciting for me, I think it just paints a picture how much of a global community we have now, and businesses can tap into talent just across the entire world, just as they would the United
Yeah.
States. And so it's been incredible.
For sure. And I talked to a guy yesterday that is originally from India, and he says that the majority of people will come to the United States. They'll go to school. They'll learn all their marketing. They'll do a couple of years in the job on a work visa, and then they'll go back to their countries and do just what you're talking about. But they'll be able to live a lot cheaper. They have the same skills as people here in the United States, but they're able to live a great life in those countries. And the city that he lived in, he says like when he grew up there were a few 100,000 people, and now there's like 10 million people because it's like a tech hub, and
Mm,
it's growing like
yeah.
crazy. And I imagine it's like that in some of the other countries. I know that Taiwan was really big, doing the same thing. I know that like Puerto Rico, Costa Rica, all of those Latin American countries, Mexico also, they're very big on tech. And so nowadays, even in countries in the Middle East, their English is so good that you can't tell a difference either. The quality of work and output, because they want to do so well and compete with American companies. I think it's a great place to be in. I mean, it helps out a lot of American companies. It helps out other countries, and the cool thing is we have the technology to make it happen now.
100%. 100%. One of my hot takes right now is I think the headlines are telling us AI is here to take our jobs, and I think we're a little ways away from that.
Hmm.
And one of the things that feels just evident of that is in the marketing world. I think a lot of your listeners will get this. We had machine learning, call it AI, going back. I mean, quite a ways, more than 10
Yeah.
years ago, when Google
Hmm.
Ads, at the time Google AdWords, introduced automated bidding strategies, right?
For sure. Yeah.
And so for more than 10 years, we've had automated bidding strategies, right? And if we think about from when Google started introducing these machine learning, AI-based pieces to their ad platform to where we are now, how much has it grown in the last decade? And it's not that much, right? They've continued to add more and more and more, and you can see that the tool the product is quite different now from where it was.
Yeah.
But I don't think any of us look at that and say like that took a ton of jobs.
For sure.
What it did is
Yeah.
it automated some of the mundane, and it allowed and also required marketers to level up a little bit
Hmm.
because no longer are we manually adjusting bids inside of Google Ads to increase output. That's just not a thing anymore, right? So what do we do? Well, creative assets inside of PMAX campaigns are a huge thing that needs to be optimized now. And as a marketer, I would say that's a more challenging and a higher level task than manually adjusting bids based on very set rules, right?
Yeah.
So we look at how AI has not taken any jobs over the last decade in our world. I think we should expect a little bit more of the same for the next 5 to 10 years. And I think at some point, as AI becomes more sentient, that there is more and more of a risk of that happening, no doubt. I don't want to turn a blind eye to that. But even if we assume 10 times the progress in the next 10 years, I don't think any marketer is losing their job to AI. I think their job is just changing and evolving. I think the only marketer that loses their job is the one who still wants to manually adjust bids, and there's just no need for it. So if you want to remain stagnant, expect your job to disappear. But I don't think if you look at the number of marketing jobs that exist in the US today, I don't think in the next 10 years there's going to be radically less because those jobs have all been automated. I think the roles where positions change and they up level as more of the mundane becomes automated. The hot take here is AI is not taking any jobs. And so what can agencies do to become more efficient? They can offshore the positions that make sense to offshore. I'm not someone that's going to sit here and you'll talk to global staffing agencies who don't understand marketing as well as I do, who will tell you that we can offshore any one of your positions. There's CMOs in these other countries. That's not a position that I would recommend most companies offshore.
Right.
And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's going to feel 100% the same to hire someone in Colombia as it does to hire someone in Provo, Utah, right? Or Austin, Texas, or you name it. What I will tell you is it can feel 70 to 80% the same at 25% of the cost. That's the ratio that is going to drive a ton of efficiency for your agency, where you find the positions that 70 to 80% of what you would get onshore is plenty, and you hire it out at 25% of the cost. So a lot of tactical positions. I actually did just hire for one of my clients a front-end web developer with 5 years experience from Colombia.
Nice.
And did so at less than 25% of what it was costing them to freelance that work out here in the United States. And so that's the type of position that absolutely makes a ton of sense to offshore. Someone that can build emails inside of Klaviyo and text message inside of Klaviyo. Media buyers, I think media buying positions are great examples. Technical SEOs, I think, are a great example. Graphic designers, a lot of these hands-on tactical positions can easily be offshored. And just because English usually isn't their first language, because they are halfway across the world, and culturally there are some things that just aren't the same in their country as they are in the US, it will not feel 100% the same as hiring someone in the US. And so I always set the expectation with my clients that this will feel 70 to 80% as good as hiring someone within the US at 25% of the cost. And let's find the positions in your organization that make sense to drive that type of efficiency through.
Well, Daryl, so you have a plethora of experience from agency work and paid advertising all the way up to running your own thing in e-commerce and even hiring, externally. If I'm a business owner sitting back saying, "Hey, this guy's got a lot of information. I need to learn. How can I elevate myself online?" What advice do you have to these business owners to take their business to the next level?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I won't beat a dead horse too much, but I think in the vein of offshoring, look for positions throughout your company. It doesn't need to be just marketing, right? My firm specializes in marketing positions because that's where I have a massive leg up on the competition. I've hired more marketers and know how to hire and vet marketers. And I have my own e-commerce store that I put them in and I make them prove that they are as good as the resume says. But it's not just marketing positions. There's a lot of roles from admin and, virtual assistants. Get a lot of that admin work being done offshore. A lot of efficiency in that. To customer service, there are a lot of positions, to bookkeeping, to accounting. There are, U.S. educated CPAs in foreign countries that come at a fraction of the cost of what you could hire a CPA for onshore here. So look for those positions where 70-80% of the, how it would feel to hire someone in the U.S., you can hire at 25% of the cost and offshore it. I'll stop talking about offshore, and here are a couple other things I think businesses need to be doing. I think in a very, very real way, businesses need to be building their brand. This e-commerce business that I bought was an e-commerce business built in the heyday of Facebook ads that was very reliant on cheap Facebook ads as a business. And as soon as that ship started sailing away and Facebook ads increased exponentially in cost, and We lost a lot of our targeting, a lot of our data signals. Facebook's a totally different ballgame today. You can't just rely on cheap Facebook ads anymore. So many businesses are having to fall back on their brand. And I see a lot of businesses failing in that environment because they didn't invest enough in brand. Brand means a lot of different things, but I think to simplify it, brand is just like a personal reputation is to you, your brand is to your business.
Okay.
And so how do you build that personal reputation, in quotes, for your business? And that's your brand. It touches so many different things, from the external appearance of the brand to product, to customer service, to you name it. There are a lot of things that get wrapped up in brand, and so it kind of becomes this nebulous thing. But I would say your brand is like your unique identity and the reputation behind that identity. So how does the world perceive who you are as a business? And you've got to be unique. You got to do things differently. You got to do things that your mama would be proud of, right? And that's what brand is at the end of the day. And so I think businesses need to be focused on that as much as ever. There's no cheap media to be bought right now. I hope at some point that hot new thing comes up. But there's really no cheap media to be bought right now. And so you can't build a business just on that anymore. I think like we've kind of taken a step back to, the early mid 1900s when it wasn't cheap to advertise and you had to hire, an ad agency that could get you those TV spots.
Yeah.
And businesses had to rely on that reputation. There were a lot of small town mom and pop shops that everyone in that town shopped at because of the brand and the reputation that business had. I think we've kind of gone back to that, but we are now on a global scale, right? You got to do that on a global scale. So focus on brand, not on cheap media, because that's not how the game is being played. We had a 20-year run there, give or take, where you could do that. And there were some really hot years within that 20-year window where businesses exploded just based on cheap traffic, cheap audiences. And we just don't have that today. I'm sure something hot will roll around. We'll have another quick go, a few years of this, a few years of that. But I think focusing on brand is really big right now.
If I could step in and just say something real quick, I think you hit the nail on the head with like we had a good 20-year run. How many times in the last 20 years have people put all of their eggs into one basket and failed, right? Like in the beginning of SEO, people are like getting all this traffic from Google. And then Google comes out with these crazy algorithms and, all the website traffic drops. And then everybody goes to Facebook, and then Facebook, business pages. People had millions of people in these business pages, and then they update their algorithm and the business page isn't showing up on people's feeds anymore. And then Instagram and TikTok and same thing, right? And we've gone through all of these things. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said brand is the most important, because if you're succeeding in one of those and it drops for whatever reason, you still have that brand that someone's gonna find you on a different platform, right? So whatever the next new thing is that we're all hoping will come out, which will be cheap advertising again, people are gonna look for you if you have a brand on that new platform. So I think you're spot on with that.
100%. And I think that brand is what causes customers to come back as well. And if you have customers who come back, you can play in the more expensive arenas, right? You can't go and buy customers today if they aren't going to come back and buy from you again and again and again, because that media is being bought by businesses who do have that type of repeat rate. And when you look at your Nikes and your Lululemons and your Away Travel and who else, name any direct to consumer sweetheart, they have great repeat rates. And so they can buy those media spots, whether that's digital, whether that's traditional, whether that's TV, or you name it. They can pay a lot more for that than the brand who doesn't have a brand, who doesn't have a high repeat rate. And so I think building brand is also a ton about building a customer that comes back again and again and again and again and again, and allows you to play the game even when the game is really expensive. A lot of businesses built themselves on cheap Facebook ads with single purchases when you could go first purchase positive on Facebook traffic. Or you name it, plug anything in, Google ads a few years prior to that, SEO before that, right? Like you could play that game where it was quick and easy and it was transactional. You could run campaigns that were first purchase positive and you could win with single purchase and didn't have to sell something extremely high value with a ton of brand behind it. Those days are over. I don't see a world where we go back to those days. I think we've just progressed beyond that. And you got to have a brand that customers come back to again and again and again and again. That allows you to spend more to acquire that customer and play in these arenas that are dominated by businesses that have phenomenal brands and bring people back again and again and again and again.
Totally. I interrupted you. So you had something else you were going to say. What other tactical advice do you have?
The only other tactical advice was, which isn't all that tactical. It is a little bit more pie in the sky, head in the clouds, but you got to be different, stand out as a brand. And I think that, so many businesses want to, just do the obvious and expect to have success. But the thing is, it's as easy as ever to start a business. Takes 20 minutes online to register an LLC and you're in business, right?
Yeah.
Takes you another 10 minutes to buy the domain, and if you have half a brain, you can spin up a website in an hour. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
as easy as ever to have a business, and so you can't just get by doing the obvious. I think businesses should really be looking to stand out. What is that unique differentiator? And I think for a lot of businesses, like, you should be having some fun with it. Don't take yourself too seriously, and let who you are just ooze out of you, right? And make that your brand, make that what you're all about. I ran into a TikTok account for a criminal defense attorney in Texas the other day. 1.6 million followers on TikTok.
Wow.
We're talking criminal defense, man. We're talking like one of the least interesting things out there.
Yeah.
And pretty niche as well. Like, how many people are going to hire a criminal defense attorney in their lives? 1.6 million followers. Because that's just because he's doing his thing, and he's not your typical criminal defense attorney, and people find that really interesting. And I was blown away by that, and also just loved it. I think it's just a case study, and just be the goofy person that you are. Let it ooze out of you, and let that be your brand. And I think in a lot of cases, in a lot of industries, that works. Even if it doesn't feel like it will, even if you're in criminal defense and you feel like you got to do it by the books, been done that way for so long, and we're attorneys, for crying out loud. We're as serious a bunch as it gets. This guy's not, and he's building a crazy following on TikTok.
Awesome. Yeah. And sometimes it takes a lot of testing to figure that out. A lot of people look at that and they're like, "Oh, overnight success," but he probably had 300 posts before that where he had to figure out his voice and what people liked and what they didn't like. And a lot of people don't want to start because they're worried about what people think, and it could negatively reflect on them or their brand or whatever. When in most cases, you're just testing your audience.
Totally.
Where do you see the future going in your space, Daryl?
Yeah. Maybe I'll just answer that for like marketing in general, since I'm involved from a few different angles right now.
Yeah.
I think that marketing is going to become more and more about brand. I've already touched on that a little bit, and how you portray that brand, which is creative, right? And we've already seen that the last couple of years, so I don't think that's anything super new.
Yeah.
I think the businesses that are going to win big in the next few years are going to be those that step in with something new and unique to offer, focusing on the brand and how they communicate that to the customers through their creative. Those are going to be the ones that win big. And we've already been seeing that. I think Apple's a great example of that. Just look back to Apple in the early days and how different they were.
Yeah.
And now they're not that different, and we're buying crappy products from them compared to what else is available, but we still do it because they did that work. They built that brand for 30 years that we are all just handcuffed to at this point, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a huge opportunity to do that in most spaces right now. I also think that there is a very real, businesses are coming back to authenticity, I think it is. And what I mean by that is we've had some weird years the last 5 years. We always point to the pandemic years, and I think the pandemic was just I think it could have been a whole variety of different types of events that just shocked the system, right? It was just a massive shock to the system, and caused a lot of things to change at very rapid rates and so forth.
Yeah.
Things from businesses going remote to businesses going out of business because that industry doesn't exist anymore, to businesses flourishing because there's such a need for this product that there wasn't a need for 6 months ago. so many things changed so quickly. I think it was just a blip in the timeline that really shocked the system. And businesses are trying to re-identify what is the new normal. And what we see
Mm-hmm.
is a lot of businesses with return to office orders requiring employees in the office several days a week. Um, and I think I understand why employees don't like that. And
Mm-hmm.
I myself work in a very hybrid scenario. I was just on a month-long road trip with my family, and I love
Mm-hmm.
the ability and the flexibility to do that. But I also
Yeah.
understand why businesses that are in a new kind of weird time that are trying to refigure out who they are, and you'll
Mm-hmm.
always do that as a business. But I think there's more businesses doing it together in the same timeline right now because of the pandemic that they're trying to identify who they are. And that's where I think we're going back to authenticity and figuring out who are we at our core and what does that look like? And how do we communicate that to our customers in a way that they're going to connect and resonate with, which is brand.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think authenticity is just a huge part of that. I think the reason why businesses want employees in the office is because we want to get back to feeling what that feels like when we're all together as a group and a family and
Yeah.
what that energy and that culture feels like, because that went away almost 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess 4 years ago. And we are not quite sure like what that is or what that feels like or who we are at our core. And it seemed like it was a
Mm-hmm.
little more obvious when we were all together. And I think there's a lot of that going on right now. So anyway, I think
Yeah.
businesses need to just, I don't think it's that hard. Don't overcomplicate it. You can hire a consultant to come in and do these exercises with you to figure out who you are and your core values and all that.
Yeah.
Or you can just get together as a group and see what comes out of it, right? Just observe
Yeah.
who are we when we're all together? Who are we at our core? And man, when there's no agenda for a meeting, what comes up, right?
Yeah.
When there is time spent together outside of the office, what comes up? And I think that yeah, eh, to try to sum that up in one word is authenticity. Business are trying to figure out
Mm-hmm.
who they are authentically at the core and be able to
Yeah.
communicate that to their customers. Because I think we lost that last few years where things just got a little weird.
Yeah, I think so, and I think there's so many more businesses now than there ever have been too, and so it's
Yeah.
you need that authenticity to really set yourself apart from your competitor and from the the person down the street. So, and every business has that. Every business just has to like figure it out. Like I said, get in a room with no agenda, throw a bunch of stuff on a whiteboard, figure out what makes you unique over everyone else, and I think you can do that. And I mean there's so many examples of somebody who said one thing on TikTok that made them blow up and just be ultra famous. Like, just find what it is for you guys, for you as a business, run with it, test it, pivot, test it, pivot until you find what your business really is, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The world's big enough. There are people out there that'll want to buy it. And there are people who won't. And
For
that
sure.
is brand at the end of the day. I think
Yeah.
businesses should have a target persona or a customer avatar, and I think they should have an anti persona as well. I think you should know we're
Good
not going to be
call.
everyone's flavor, and whose flavor
Yeah.
are we not going to be, and we're okay with that. And I just, man, every time I travel, I think I just realize how big the world is. Even just the
Mm-hmm.
U.S., how big the U.S. is. I was in Boston for the first time in my life this last weekend, and I'm just soaking it in and just seeing millions of people on the street and realizing this is a big world, man. There's
Huge.
enough consumers out there that just be who you are,
Yeah.
and you got to go find the right people. But there are plenty of people out there who will buy that from you. And there are
Totally.
plenty of people who won't like that and won't buy that from you as well. And that's okay. There are
Totally.
enough customers out there to just be who you are and then find your
Yeah.
people, find those people who are going to buy it from you.
Right. Well, Daryl, at the end of every podcast, I ask two different questions. So the first one is if you could go back to your younger self and give advice, what would that advice be?
Yeah. I've got two answers for you. Eli, I've
Okay.
listened to a lot of your episodes here.
Mm-hmm.
I love them. First of all, I think you're a phenomenal moderator, and second of all, you had some awesome guests. So I listened to a lot of these.
Yeah.
I will just repeat a common answer that I've heard. So
Okay.
if there's I guess anyone listening, I want to say anyone young, younger than me, just getting started, they'll listen to this.
Yeah.
I'll just reiterate what's been said over and over again. Don't worry so much. Like, it all works out. I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of us just have a tendency to want to control things and make things, pan out a certain way for us. And there's a lot of worry and anxiety that goes along with that. I would just say, just don't worry. Just do the dang thing. And don't
Yeah.
worry, it'll all shake out. And it won't shake out how you thought it would or how you wanted it to, but it could be a million times better, and just allow that to happen.
Yeah.
So I will just reiterate that just don't worry so much, because I've done that a ton throughout my career and I still do it a ton, and I'm still trying to figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
So ditto, like, I want to just repeat that because that's huge. My second answer for you, Eli, it actually goes back to the man in the arena quote that we were talking about. Show up. I think just show up. There are times when I haven't shown up for a variety of reasons, because I was tired and so I didn't attend that event. I was worried about what someone would think, so I didn't do that thing, and so forth. And as I go on, that's something that I'm really trying to live true to, is just show up. If I get invited to that thing, like, there's a good chance I'm going to go, whether it sounds awful or I'm really excited about it. If it's all the way across the country or across the world, you name it, I'm going to try to find a way to just show up. Sometimes that's hard with being a father of 4 and 2
Sure.
businesses and everything, but just show up. You never know what's going to come out of it. You'll make the most amazing connections. You'll have the most amazing experiences. Just be the man in the arena that's willing to stumble and fall and just get back up and just keep doing it. I think this life is too short not to just go all in. And so I think just show up. If you get invited to something that sounds terrible, like, just go experience it. It might be just as terrible as you thought it was going to be, and you will still have learnings and wins from that thing. Or you may be radically surprised at what comes out of it, whether that's a single conversation or a new connection that you made or something new that you were able to experience. Just show up. I think that is, if you're in college, if you're new in your career, if you're old in your career, just show up. There are so many people that pivot careers midway through because they made this one connection. It drove them in this direction. And now they're living this totally different life that feels more true and authentic to who they are, just because they showed up that one time. So don't miss that opportunity. Just show up.
I love that. I'm gonna snippet that out, and I'm gonna hashtag just show up. I'm gonna print a shirt, just show up. I love it. I agree, man. There's so many stories of people who went to the one event that they didn't go to, that they made the connection that got them their next job, that introduced them to their wife, or whatever. There's so many stories like that. So I love just show up.
Yes, I love it.
So, okay, the last question is, do you have any books, podcasts, or leaders that currently inspire you?
Yeah, here are the things I'm working on right now. I consume a lot of podcasts. That is my preferred thing in the earbuds when I'm out in the mountains running. I'm not a big music guy, and audiobooks, I tend to get lost. So I listen to a lot of podcasts. Given my recent experience this weekend out on the Spartan farm with Joe DeSena, he has a podcast called The Hard Way, and I've really been enjoying that. They're pretty short episodes, and he has fascinating guests on there. So I really do like The Hard Way by Joe DeSena. That's been a more recent addition to my podcast library.
Nice.
As far as reading, there's an author that has written a lot of really, really well-known business books, Patrick Lencioni. And he's known for a lot of his books. He has a book called The Motive that I am nearly through right now. And that book's going to be a game changer for me. The way that I approach business, the way that I approach leadership, the way that I approach life. So The Motive by Patrick Lencioni is a highly recommended book that I'm working on currently.
Nice. I love it. Well, Daryl, I mean, you're a wealth of knowledge. I love learning more about you, your personal story. I always love hanging out with you, man. We need to do lunch again sometime.
Yes, sir. Please.
I appreciate the time you've taken to enlighten us and through all of your many years of experience. I appreciate you taking the time to join us here on the podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Eli. It's been fun.
You bet. And to everyone else listening, we'll see you next week. Thanks so much for listening to the episode today. Listen, I know how valuable an hour of your time can be, and for you to take that busy time out of your day and spend it with us, it really means a lot. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider liking and subscribing on whatever platform you're on. And don't forget to leave a comment. Tell us what you thought about the interview. Ask us questions. Let us know what other digital topics you'd like to hear about in the future. We're here to add value to your life and elevate your digital presence online. If you'd like some help doing that, reach out to me at fireusmarketing.com. See you on the next one.